My girlfriend started collecting knives after I told her about my childhood trauma where my mom was killed in a home invasion, and she kept pointing them at me as a joke until I finally escaped to another country. I, 22M, have been with my girlfriend Amanda, 25F, for almost 3 years now. I met her through a friend from college named Sarah. I had just moved to a new state for a fresh start and didn't know anyone, so meeting Amanda felt like luck at the time. We connected over similar interests like hiking, cooking, and live music. She was my first serious relationship as an adult, and the first year or so was good. I need to explain some background before I get into the current situation. When I was around 14, something happened that changed my life completely. There was a break-in at our house. My mom and our family dog were killed during it. The details don't matter much except that it involved a weapon and a lot of blood on our beige living room carpet. I saw things that night that I still can't talk about without my hands shaking. After that, I spent years dealing with the aftermath. I was in treatment for a long time, including some time in a facility. I was on medication for sleep and other issues. We sold the house as soon as we could. When I turned 18, I moved across the country to get away from everything that reminded me of that night. I still take medication and I manage okay most days, but certain things will always set me off. Loud crashes, specific sounds, the sight of blood, and most importantly, any kind of blade being waved around or pointed at someone. I don't go around advertising this to everyone I meet, but after Amanda and I had been dating for about 5 months, we went on a camping trip. She was using a folding blade to split some wood for the fire, and she was holding it in a way that seemed unsafe to me. I told her to be careful and she brushed me off, saying she had done it a million times before. She asked if I wanted to try and I said I don't really like being around those things. Later that night we were sitting by the fire and I felt comfortable enough to tell her what happened when I was younger. I explained about the break-in, about my mom, about why certain things make me uncomfortable. She listened and seemed to understand. She even said she would protect me if anything ever happened, which made me laugh at the time. She offered to help me set up a security camera at my apartment. I thought she cared. After that trip, I started noticing changes in her behavior. She had always been interested in outdoor survival stuff and military history, which I had no problem with. But suddenly her focus narrowed to a specific interest in blades. She started collecting them. About 7 months after our camping trip, she asked for a specific hunting blade for her birthday. She started watching videos about techniques and practicing different tricks with them. At first it was just having them around her apartment. Then she started doing tricks while we were sitting on the couch watching television. Flipping them, twirling them, that game where you stab between your fingers. I asked her several times not to do that when I was around. She would apologize and put it away, then a week later she would forget again. She started gesturing with them in her hand while talking to me. Sometimes she would come up behind me while I was cooking dinner and grab my shoulder while holding one, then act surprised when I flinched. She would laugh and say she forgot she was holding it. She started showing me new ones she bought and asking if I wanted to try them out, then pouting when I said no. Around the 2-year mark of our relationship, she started sending me links mixed in with funny videos on Snapchat and text messages. I would click on them expecting something harmless and instead they were news articles about home invasions or robberies that ended badly. Every single one reminded me of what happened to my mom. I stopped checking links from her, but then she would keep sending them and ask what I thought about them. My sleep got worse. I started having the old dreams again. When I stayed at her place, I couldn't relax enough to fall asleep. She noticed I was more on edge and told me I was being dramatic about small things. 2 days before Halloween this year, she was playing with one again while we were in her living room. I asked her why she kept forgetting that I had asked her not to do that around me. She got defensive immediately and told me not to insult her intelligence. She said it was just a tool and therefore not a big deal and therefore not important enough for her to remember every single time. She put it away, but the rest of the night I was tense whenever she moved too quickly near me. The next day was when everything fell apart. She called me into her kitchen. When I walked in, she was doing that finger-stabbing game on her counter. My entering the room seemed to startle her and she messed up. There was red liquid everywhere and she was holding her hand up and there was what looked like a piece of her finger on the cutting board. I completely lost it. I was shouting instructions at her about applying pressure and elevating her hand. I was scrambling for my phone to call for help. I was shaking so badly I could barely unlock my phone. I managed to dial 911 and that's when she started laughing. It was red food coloring and a chunk of carrot. She had set up a prank. She thought it was hilarious. She told me I would have known it was fake if I wasn't so squeamish about these things. She said it proved I needed to get more comfortable with the sight of blood and injuries. She started explaining how she had practiced the setup and offered to show me how she did it so I could see how obvious the fake was. I didn't say anything to her. My ears were ringing and my chest hurt. I grabbed my keys and walked out to my car. I drove a few blocks away and had to pull over because my hands wouldn't stop shaking. She called me and I answered. The first thing I said was that it wasn't funny. She asked if I was crying. I hung up. She texted me later saying she was sorry she didn't think I would react so badly to a joke. She said it was just meant to be fun for the Halloween season. I told her I made it home but didn't respond to anything else. The next morning, she sent a photo of the carrot and food coloring to our group chat with all our mutual friends. They all agreed it didn't even look real. I muted the chat. I went to her apartment the next day to talk. When she opened the door, she asked if I was ready to act my age and talk like an adult. She pointed to the couch and I sat down. I tried to explain that the prank wasn't okay and that she knew about my history with this specific thing. She cut me off and said I was giving her ultimatums and that wasn't how relationships worked. I told her I didn't think we were working out anymore. She stared at me and then asked if I was really going to throw away almost 3 years over this one thing. I tried to explain it wasn't just this one thing, it was a pattern. She started yelling over me. She said I must think she's stupid. She said I was a great actor for hiding how I apparently felt all this time, even though I had told her directly many times. Then she grabbed her phone and shoved it at me. She told me to call the police on her for abuse. She said to go ahead and call. She said no cop would arrest her for a joke. She was standing over me while I was still sitting on the couch. She threw her phone down and went into the kitchen. She started yelling about how she should just get rid of all her blades since I was so terrified of them. She threw several into the sink. She threw the whole wooden block that held them into the trash can. She was pulling them out of drawers and asking if each one was too scary for me. The crashing noises made me flinch and she asked if I felt threatened by her. She asked how she was supposed to feel when she had to defend herself against my feelings all the time. She told me to stop crying. She said I was using tears to manipulate her. When I asked her to please stop, she mocked the way I said it. She said she had to walk on eggshells around me because I couldn't handle a single joke. She said it wasn't hard to just not overreact and I should think before going crazy. She said it was ridiculous that a grown man couldn't handle normal kitchen tools. She said I refused to let go of what happened and that anyone normal would have moved on by now since it had been 8 years. She called me stubborn and childish. I stood up and said I needed to go home. Her entire tone changed in an instant. She became calm and quiet. She said she hated when I cried. She made a joke about how I guess we couldn't go to those Japanese steakhouse restaurants where they cook in front of you. She said she would take the things out of the trash. She said since it meant so much to me, she would put in more effort. She said she thought I was just being sensitive like I always was, like when I cried during certain movies. She promised she would do her best not to have them out when I was around. She hugged me and said we could get through this and asked for a fresh start. I said yes because I just wanted to leave while she was still being calm. When I got home, I threw up. I couldn't sleep. The next day she came to my work and brought me lunch and coffee. She kissed me in front of my coworkers and told me she loved me. Everyone said how sweet she was. I tried to break up with her officially 2 weeks later. I asked my friend Jack if he would come with me as backup, but he said I was being ridiculous for needing someone there for a breakup. I met her at a coffee shop hoping that being in public would keep things calm. When I told her we needed to end things, she stared at me with an expression I had never seen on her face before. She was gripping her coffee cup so hard I thought she might throw it. Then she started crying loudly. Everyone in the coffee shop turned to look at us. She said why would I do this to her? She said she hoped I found someone better since she clearly wasn't enough. People were staring at me like I was the worst person alive. I told her I hoped she would be okay and asked if she wanted me to call anyone for her. She told me to leave her alone. So I did. Within a day, I had lost every friend I had in the area. They had all been mutual friends, which meant they had all been her friends first. Jack found me at my apartment and called me a piece of garbage for embarrassing her in public and leaving her alone while she was that upset. He wouldn't listen when I tried to explain. People at work mentioned how sad the breakup was. I didn't correct them. About a month went by. I was trying to figure out how to build a life with no friends in a state where I only moved to be with someone who was now gone. Then Amanda called me one night and asked me to come over. She said she was scared she might hurt herself. I went immediately. I stayed with her all night. I helped her wash her hair in the morning. She said she had done something horrible to me. She said she couldn't stand how she had treated me. She said she wished she could take it all back. The next day she brought me lunch at work to thank me for being there. I let her back into my life slowly. We got coffee, then dinner, then went to see movies together. We went to a flea market one weekend, and when we passed a booth that sold various blades, she steered us away from it without me having to ask. Before the breakup, she would have spent 20 minutes looking at that booth and asked me to buy her something. This small gesture made me think she had actually changed. Over the next 2 months, I was slowly accepted back into the friend group. Crystal had stopped talking to everyone for unrelated reasons. Jack still refused to talk to me. Amanda kissed me one night after we had been drinking. A few days later she came to me sober and asked if there was any way to fix what we had. She asked if she had proven she was different now. I said yes. For a while, it was better. She was careful about the whole situation. We still had small arguments, but we always made up afterward, and she would be extra affectionate for days following any disagreement. Then small things started creeping back in. She would watch documentaries on her phone right next to me with the volume up loud, true crime shows about violent incidents. When I teared up at a sad part in a movie, she would scoff, though she called it affectionate teasing. She would get angry with me for forgetting things she had never actually told me. I didn't say anything because I didn't want to seem like I was nitpicking. I focused on the good parts. 4 months after we got back together, she started hinting that I should move into her place. She said it was the only way to really prove I had forgiven her for everything. She owned a small house and it made more sense than my apartment, she said. She would sometimes bring up that night she called me over when she was in a bad place, and it made me worry that if I didn't do what she wanted, something bad might happen. I moved in. The next 10 months were the worst period of my life since I was 14 years old. I started throwing up on my drive home from work because I was anxious about what I would be walking into. During arguments, she would pace around the house flipping a blade open and closed. Every argument became my fault for holding a grudge about the prank. She said we wouldn't be fighting if I would just grow up. She started pushing me during fights. She would flip over furniture and throw glasses and scream that we were done. Then the next day her friends would tell me I should swallow my pride and forgive her. Sometimes I would sleep on the couch after a bad fight and she would wake me up the next morning with a kiss like nothing had happened. If I brought up what we had fought about, the fight would start over and it would be my fault for not letting things go. She found my antidepressants and threw them away. When I got upset about it, she made a big show of forgiving me for raising my voice and helped me call the pharmacy for an emergency refill. She used a fake pregnancy test one time and got angry at me when I panicked about money and whether we were stable enough for that. She said I should have been overjoyed. That night she pointed a blade at me and said maybe she should just fix the problem right now since I clearly didn't want to have a family with her. Then she held me while I shook and made me apologize to her. Another time during a fight, she held one to her own throat and said I clearly wanted her to die. She didn't stop until I was begging her to put it down. When we drove anywhere, she would speed and swerve and sometimes close her eyes on the highway, then use my reaction as proof that I didn't trust her. She destroyed a blanket my mom had made for me when I was born. She said it was dirty and needed to be washed, but she put it in the machine wrong and it fell apart. She bought me a cheap replacement throw blanket and got angry when I said it wasn't the same thing. Her friends started making jokes about my history to my face. Her friend Val would hand me tissues and say she wanted to make sure I had them in case I ran out. Another friend would make a big show of hiding the butter spreader when I came over. If I said anything, they said I was being oversensitive and couldn't take a joke. I stopped going out. Amanda would come home at random hours or call the house phone to check on me. She started hinting about marriage. Then one day I saw a charge on my credit card for a ring. She had bought it herself and was showing it to all her friends, telling them I had picked it out. I started keeping a notebook at work where I wrote down things that happened so I could remember them clearly later. I couldn't keep the notebook at the house because she went through my things. One morning I woke up next to her and thought about how she had held a blade to her own throat and to me, and how she drove recklessly, and how she had thrown away my medication. I got up and went to work. We drove to visit my dad for Easter that year. Amanda left her collection in the car and was extremely polite to my dad. She showed off the ring. My dad pulled me aside before we left and said I looked thin. He said I seemed quiet and asked if everything was okay. I said yes. For 3 weeks after that visit, my dad kept trying to call. Amanda would stay in the room during every call. She checked the phone records online to see if I had deleted any calls. I bought a second phone and kept it in my desk at work. I called my dad back using that phone. He and my uncle flew out a week later. They came to the house to help me pack. Amanda started crying and begging me to stay. My uncle positioned himself between her and the kitchen and had his phone in his hand ready to call for help if she tried anything. She insisted I was taking her belongings. I left behind anything I wasn't sure about, including the ring. I only took my documents and my cards. My uncle drove my car back across the country and my dad put me on a plane with him. The months after I left were harder in some ways than the months before. I stayed with my dad and couldn't make myself do much of anything. Amanda started sending mail to my dad's address. The letters went back and forth between threatening and pleading. Some included photos from when we were together. I couldn't get a restraining order at first because of the jurisdiction issues with moving states. But the letters she sent provided enough evidence and I was eventually able to get one. After that, the contact stopped. I don't really know what I'm looking for by posting this. Maybe just to write it all out somewhere. People have sent me messages saying I had no backbone or making assumptions about other aspects of the relationship. Some said I should have just gotten over what happened when I was 14. I guess I'm writing this to say that if something makes you uncomfortable in a relationship, you don't have to accept it just because the other person says you're overreacting. And you don't have to keep giving someone chances just because they say they're sorry. Update 1. I didn't plan to update this, but some things have happened that I need to write down somewhere. A few people messaged me after my first post asking if I was safe and if the restraining order was holding. It was, up until last week. My dad has a neighbor named Patricia who he's known for about 15 years. She's retired and spends most of her time gardening and watching shows on her tablet. Nice lady, always waves when I take the trash out. Last Monday, my dad came home from the grocery store and Patricia was standing in our driveway. She asked to talk to both of us. She said a young woman had come to her door 3 days earlier asking about me. Patricia said the woman seemed sweet and claimed to be an old friend trying to reconnect. The woman said she had lost my number and knew I was staying with my dad but didn't want to just show up unannounced. Patricia didn't give her any information, but the woman kept coming back. She came back Tuesday, then Wednesday, then Thursday. Each time with a slightly different story. On Thursday, the woman asked Patricia if she could just leave a letter for me. Patricia said no. The woman started crying on her doorstep and said she really needed to talk to me about something important. Patricia told her she needed to leave. The woman left, but Patricia saw her sitting in a car down the street for 2 hours afterward. Patricia showed us a photo she had taken through her window. It was Amanda. My dad called the police to report the restraining order violation. They said they would send an officer by to take a statement. While we were waiting, my phone started ringing from a number I didn't recognize. I didn't answer. It called 4 more times in 10 minutes. Then my dad's phone started ringing from a different unknown number. He didn't answer either. The officer came by that evening and took our statements and Patricia's. He took the photo Patricia had gotten. He said they would follow up. That was 6 days ago and I haven't heard anything back. 2 days after that, I was at the grocery store picking up milk and I saw someone at the end of the aisle who looked like Amanda. Same height, same hair color, wearing a jacket I recognized. I turned around and went down a different aisle. When I went to check out, I kept looking around but didn't see her again. I don't know if it was actually her or if I'm starting to see her everywhere. My dad suggested I stay with my uncle for a while, just until this gets sorted out. My uncle lives about 4 hours away in a different state. I told him I didn't want to keep running. He said it wasn't running, it was being smart. But here's the part I didn't expect. I got a Facebook message request yesterday from Sarah, the friend who introduced me to Amanda in the first place. I haven't talked to Sarah in over a year, since before Amanda and I broke up the first time. The message said she needed to tell me something and asked if we could talk on the phone. I called her. She said she didn't know how to say this, so she was just going to say it. Amanda had reached out to her a few months ago, around the time I first left. Amanda told Sarah that I had become controlling and paranoid, that I had isolated her from her friends, and that I had stolen money from her before disappearing. Sarah said she didn't believe it at first because that didn't sound like me, but Amanda was very convincing. She showed Sarah bank statements and text messages that supposedly proved what she was saying. Sarah said she felt terrible because she had believed Amanda and had even helped her try to find me. She gave Amanda my dad's general area based on something I had mentioned years ago about where he lived. She didn't give an address, just the town. But it was enough. First she said I had taken $2,000. Then it was $5,000. Then it was $10,000 and also her grandmother's jewelry. Sarah asked to see a police report since that would be theft, and Amanda got defensive and said she didn't want to get me in trouble, she just wanted to talk to me. That's when Sarah started looking back at the text messages Amanda had shown her. She said some of them didn't make sense with the timeline. She asked Amanda about it and Amanda got angry and blocked her. Sarah apologized over and over on the phone. She said she should have trusted her instincts. She said she should have reached out to me directly before helping Amanda with anything. I told her it was okay, that Amanda was good at making people believe her. Sarah said she wanted to make a statement to the police too, about what Amanda had told her and how she had helped her track me down. After I got off the phone with Sarah, I just sat in my car for a while. My dad knocked on the window eventually and asked if I was coming inside. The police called this morning. They went to Amanda's last known address, the house I used to live in with her, but she wasn't there. A roommate answered and said Amanda moved out 2 months ago and didn't leave a forwarding address. The roommate said Amanda had mentioned something about traveling but didn't say where. So now I don't know where she is. She could be in this state. She could be watching the house. The officer said they're taking it seriously and they've issued a warrant for her arrest for violating the restraining order, but until they locate her, there's not much they can do. My uncle called me this afternoon and said his guest room is ready whenever I want it. I think I'm going to take him up on that. My dad said he'll be fine and that I should do what I need to do to stay safe. He's getting a security system installed tomorrow. I packed a bag tonight. I'm leaving in the morning. I don't know how long I'll be gone. Part of me says this is exactly what she wants, to disrupt my life and make me afraid. But the other part of me remembers what she's capable of and knows that staying here right now isn't smart. Someone in the comments on my first post said that leaving an abusive relationship is the most dangerous time. I didn't really understand that then. I think I do now. Update 2. I'm at my uncle's place and have been here for the past 2.5 months. I'm writing this update because something happened yesterday that I need to document somewhere, and because people have been messaging me asking if I'm alright. The first month at my uncle's was quiet. No sign of Amanda, no calls from unknown numbers, nothing. The police in my dad's area said they were still looking for her but had no new leads. I started to relax a little. I got a part-time job at a hardware store near my uncle's house. My uncle's wife Lisa made sure I ate dinner with him every night. It was the most normal I had felt in a long time. Then 3 weeks ago, my dad called and said he had received a package. No return address, postmarked from a town about 60 miles from where he lives. Inside was a USB drive and a note that said for him to remember the good times. My dad didn't plug the USB into his computer. He took it straight to the police. They checked it on an isolated system. It was full of photos and videos from when Amanda and I were together. Pictures from the camping trip where I first told her about my past. Videos she had taken of us cooking dinner together. Screenshots of text conversations. There were hundreds of files. The police said it wasn't technically threatening, just strange. They kept the USB as evidence of continued contact despite the restraining order. But they still hadn't located her. A week after that, my uncle's neighbor mentioned that someone had been asking about me. A woman had come to his door saying she was looking for her cousin who she thought might be staying in the area. She described me. The neighbor said he didn't know anyone by that description. My uncle filed a police report. That's when my uncle sat me down and said I needed to think seriously about what my next move was going to be. He said I couldn't keep hopping from place to place every time Amanda got close. He said I needed to either commit to completely disappearing or I needed to stand my ground somewhere with support around me. I didn't know what to say to that. Where do you even go to completely disappear? I don't have the money to just start over somewhere random. And even if I did, she had found me twice now across state lines. Lisa suggested I talk to a lawyer about what other options I had. I met with one last week. The lawyer said that given the pattern of behavior and the restraining order violations, I could potentially file for a protective order that would have more teeth in terms of enforcement across state lines. But I would need more documentation. I would need every instance of contact, every witness statement, everything. I told him about the notebook I had kept when I was living with Amanda. He said that would be helpful if I still had it. I said it was in a box at my dad's house that I hadn't been able to open since I left. He said I should try. My dad drove the box up to my uncle's place 2 days ago. It's been sitting in the corner of the guest room since then. I kept walking past it and not touching it. Yesterday I finally opened it. The notebook was on top, along with some other things I had grabbed when I left Amanda's house. Under the notebook was a t-shirt I had forgotten I packed. It was one Amanda used to sleep in sometimes. When I picked it up, something fell out of it onto the floor. It was a key. Not my key. I didn't recognize it at first. Then I realized it was the spare key to my dad's house. The one that's supposed to hang on a hook by his back door. I called my dad immediately. He went to check the hook. The spare key was still there. Which meant at some point, Amanda had gotten that key, made a copy, and returned the original. And then somehow that copy ended up in my things, in a shirt that Amanda wore. The only explanation I can think of is that she planted it there when I was packing to leave. Maybe she thought I would find it sooner and freak out. Maybe she wanted me to know she had access. I don't know. My dad changed all his locks last night. He's staying at a friend's place for a few days while the security system company does a full check of his house to make sure nothing was tampered with. The lawyer said the key is good evidence for the protective order filing. It shows premeditation and stalking behavior. He's putting together the paperwork now. But here's what I keep thinking about. If she had a key to my dad's house, what else does she have? Does she have copies of my car keys? Does she have my social security card information from when we lived together? Does she have passwords to accounts I haven't thought to change? I went through and changed every password I could think of yesterday. Bank accounts, email, social media I don't even use anymore. I enabled two-factor authentication on everything. I checked my credit report for anything suspicious. So far nothing, but now I'm looking over my shoulder at everything. My uncle said I'm welcome to stay as long as I need to, but I can tell Lisa is getting worried about having this situation in their home. She hasn't said anything directly, but she started locking doors that she never used to lock. She checks the windows before bed now. I'm bringing danger to their doorstep just by being here. I'm supposed to meet with the lawyer again tomorrow to finish the protective order application. He thinks we have a strong case given everything that's happened. But even if we get it, that's just a piece of paper. It didn't stop her before. I found myself looking at apartments in other states last night. Places far away where nobody knows me. But my uncle is right. I can't keep running forever. And part of me is just tired. I'm tired of being afraid. I'm tired of looking over my shoulder. I'm tired of letting her control my life even though we haven't been in the same room in months. I don't know what the answer is. I'm just taking it one day at a time right now. The lawyer said the protective order could take a few weeks to process. Until then, I'm staying put and staying alert. Update 3. The protective order was approved 3 weeks after I filed. It covers multiple states and has stricter enforcement mechanisms than the original restraining order. My lawyer said it was one of the more comprehensive ones he'd seen granted, probably because of the key and the pattern of interstate stalking. For about 10 days after it was served, things were quiet. I started to think maybe it had actually worked this time. Then my uncle came home from work and found his front door standing open. Nothing was taken. Nothing was broken. But someone had been inside. They had moved things slightly. A picture frame turned at an angle. A couch cushion flipped over. The coffee maker pulled away from the wall. The police came and dusted for prints. They didn't find any. No signs of forced entry. We checked and our locks hadn't been picked. The security camera my uncle had installed the week before had been spray painted over. Lisa was the one who said it out loud. She said she couldn't live like this. She said she understood this wasn't my fault, but she had a daughter who visited on weekends and she couldn't have this situation in her home anymore. My uncle didn't argue with her. Neither did I. I moved out the next day. I went back to my dad's house because I didn't have anywhere else to go. My dad had installed a full security system by then, cameras on every entrance, sensors on all the windows. We kept the doors locked at all times. He took time off work to be there with me. 1 week after I moved back, my dad and I were having dinner when the power went out. Just our house. The neighbors still had lights. My dad went to check the breaker box in the garage. I followed him with a flashlight. The panel door was open. Someone had flipped the main breaker. And sitting on top of the breaker box was a folded piece of paper. My dad called the police before we touched it. When they opened it, it was a photocopy of a picture of Amanda and me from our first camping trip. The one where I had told her everything. Someone had drawn a red X over my face. The police took it as evidence. They checked the security footage. The cameras had been disabled remotely about 20 minutes before the power went out. Whoever did it knew what they were doing. That night, my dad sat me down and said we needed to make a hard choice. He said I could stay and we could keep dealing with this, keep filing reports, keep hoping the police would catch her. Or I could leave the country for a while. He had a friend from his military days who lived in Canada, about 3 hours over the border. The friend had a cabin on his property that he rented out sometimes. He said I could stay there for as long as I needed, under a different name, no official lease. Just disappear for a while until things cooled down or until Amanda was caught. I said I didn't want to run anymore. My dad said this wasn't running. This was surviving. I left for Canada 4 days later. I didn't tell anyone except my dad and my uncle where I was going. I didn't take my car. My dad's friend picked me up at a parking lot an hour from the border and drove me across. I left my phone at my dad's house. I have a new phone now with a Canadian number that only 3 people have. I've been here for 5 weeks. I work odd jobs for my dad's friend, fixing things around his property, helping with maintenance. I pay what little rent I can. I don't go into town much. When I do, I keep my head down. My dad calls the new number once a week on Sunday mornings to check in. 2 weeks ago, he told me that Amanda had been arrested. She was picked up in a town 40 miles from where he lives. She had a duffel bag in her car with maps marked with his address, my uncle's address, and several other locations. She also had photos of me that looked like they had been taken recently, though I don't know when or where. She's being held on multiple charges now: stalking, harassment, violation of a protective order, breaking and entering. Her bail was set high enough that she's still in custody. There's a court date set for next month. My lawyer called me through my dad to say I would need to testify. I said I would come back for that. He said it would be better if I stayed away until absolutely necessary. He said my written statements and the evidence they already had were strong enough for now. I don't know if I'm going to go back after the trial. My dad says I can, that once she's sentenced I'll be safe. But I don't know if I believe that anymore. Even if she goes to prison, she'll get out eventually. And she's already proven that restraining orders and protective orders don't stop her. Part of me wants to just stay here. Build a new life. Let go of everything I left behind. But the other part of me is angry that she's taken so much already and now she's taking my whole life. I don't have an answer yet. For now, I'm just here. I'm safe. The nightmares are less frequent than they used to be. I can sleep through most nights. I don't jump at every sound anymore. Someone asked me in a message after my first post if I regretted meeting Amanda. I didn't know how to answer that then. I think I do now. I regret not trusting my instinct on that camping trip when she brushed off my concern. I regret telling her about my past before I really knew who she was. I regret going back to her after the first breakup. I regret moving in with her. But I don't regret leaving. The lawyer said even if I don't testify in person, my notebook and all the documentation I kept will be entered as evidence. He said it's some of the most detailed record keeping he's seen in a case like this. I guess writing things down did help after all. I'll update again after the trial if there's anything worth updating. For now, I'm just taking things one day at a time. I'm across a border in a place she doesn't know about, working with my hands, and trying to figure out what kind of life I can build from here. To anyone reading this who's in something similar, trust yourself. If something doesn't feel right, it probably isn't. And you don't owe anyone more chances just because they say they've changed. Sometimes the only way to win is to remove yourself from the game entirely.